Okay, before we get deeper into how deep neural networks work exactly, let's take a moment to get the big picture here and see if we can get some broad intuition for it without the details. First off, no pressure right now if you don't understand all of it. We're just getting a taste. We'll go into the nitty-gritty of everything we're talking about here in future videos. We'll also zoom out regularly to the big picture so we don't get lost in the details. Right now, try to get a feel for how something like this might work and begin to imagine what it could be. So sit back, relax, and try your best to see the big picture. The number one goal of this course is for you to experience a paradigm shift. In time, you'll see that fundamentally, everything is made up of data. The world is just an endless stream of data. And this data stream is received by our senses, our eyes, ears, our skin, etc., which is turned into numerous signals that are sent to your brain to be processed and transformed into thought, emotion, and understanding. Perhaps even what we might call consciousness or sense of self. But really, signals are just numbers. Just like when we code something, it gets compiled into zeros and ones that the computer can understand. Your brain, in this sense, is like a computer too, except that it has a pretty different structure and has a different way of solving problems. Now, seeing the world as data and problem solving as processing that data definitely requires a big paradigm shift. And that's one of the reasons why deep learning is so hard to grasp intuitively at the beginning. It's actually much like reading the Matrix. At the beginning, it's just a bunch of gibberish, but once you understand it, you see the world in it. And this paradigm shift of seeing the world as data enables you to build neural networks to solve otherwise impossibly complex problems. And often, it really feels like a superpower. Now, in the previous video, we talked about how machine learning works. There's input data, and then a function, and then an output from that function. We said unlike coding, we don't build this function manually ourselves, but let the machine figure out this function by giving it some inputs and then correct outputs. A neural network is just one way to tell the machine how to build this function by itself. So one way to look at a neural network is as a function that transforms input to look like output that we want. But how does a neural network do that exactly? Okay, so for simplicity, we actually omitted a couple of things from the previous model. So we omitted label and then the loss. The label here is just the correct answer. It's what we want the function to output. And this output here is whatever the function actually outputs. So the loss is the difference between the output and then the label. It's how wrong the function is. It makes sense, right? The larger the difference between what the function actually outputs and then the correct answer, the label, the more wrong the function is. So larger the loss, more wrong the function is. Okay, so how can the machine figure out this function on its own? Well, how about if we start with a completely random function? Then the output here will be completely random too, right? Then we can compare it to the correct answer or the label here, which is what we want the function to output. Now, the bigger the difference, the more wrong the function is, which means larger loss. So larger the loss, the more we want the function to change itself. So we change the function a little bit in a way that it'll make this loss slightly smaller. We do that many times until the loss is very small. When the loss is 0, the function's output is exactly equal to the label. That means the machine learning algorithm got it exactly right. You see how this might work? We can change the function a little bit by little bit until this loss is very small. This is how we make the machine figure out this function on its own. Okay, you get the idea now, but exactly what kind of function can do this kind of self-learning? Well, one kind of function that can do this is called a deep neural network. In fact, this is the best function we know of doing this kind of machine learning, and this is basically what deep learning is. Deep learning is using a deep neural network, which is just a specific type of this function, to solve problems by letting the machine learn on its own. And in a broad sense, this is exactly how it does it. We have an input and our target output, which is the label, and we keep changing the neural network, which again is this function, until the loss is very small. That's it.